The medieval world rises in memory like a landscape carved from storm clouds full of shadows, firelight, and the distant echoes of marching armies. It was a time when the boundaries between faith and fear, destiny and disaster could shift in a heartbeat. Castles rose from the earth like stone giants, empires collided with the force of thunder, and the smallest decisions could change the fate of generations. History often remembers kings and conquerors, but sometimes it is the final moments of ordinary people and extraordinary leaders that burn their way into the centuries that follow. Our journey begins not with an army or a throne, but with a young deacon walking the crowded streets of ancient Rome. The air smells of dust and incense as Lawrence moves through the city with a calmness that confuses his enemies. The Roman Empire sees Christianity as a spark capable of wildfire, and Lawrence has become a focus of their suspicion. When officials demand the church's wealth, he seems to comply. But instead of gold or jewels, he gathers those he believes truly represent the heart of his faith: the poor, the sick, and the forgotten. Standing before the empire's authorities, he offers them not treasure, but truth, delivered with a quiet courage that unsettles the powerful more than any weapon could. The days that follow are heavy with tension. Rome does not easily forgive defiance, especially not from someone it expected to bend. But Lawrence's final hours leave a deeper impression than any punishment. What the empire intended to break instead becomes a symbol of unshakable conviction. His calm resolve in the face of death spreads across the early Christian world like a whisper that refuses to fade. His story teaches that even in the shadow of an empire, an individual can stand taller than the walls built to contain him. Centuries later, on the other side of the world, the sky darkens again, not with a gathering storm, but with the thunder of hooves. The Mongol armies advance across the Middle East like a force of nature, disciplined, unstoppable, and feared by every kingdom in their path. Baghdad, the shining jewel of the Islamic Golden Age, is a city of scholars, libraries, astronomers, and poets. For generations, it has been a symbol of light in a world full of uncertainty. But even the brightest lights can be swallowed by night. The Caliph Al-Musta'sim faces a moment no ruler wishes to see. Behind him lies a city that once defined culture and learning. Before him stands Hulagu Khan's army, a presence so overwhelming that even the bravest commanders struggle to imagine victory. The Caliph's hesitation, whether born of miscalculation, conflicting advice, or simple disbelief, seals Baghdad's fate. When the Mongols take the city, the world watches an era vanish in days. The libraries that once held centuries of knowledge fall silent. Baghdad's golden age ends not with a whisper, but with a collapse so sudden that history still shudders at its memory. The Caliph's final moments symbolize more than personal defeat. They mark the dramatic turning of a historical tide. His death becomes a reminder that even the most powerful civilizations can find themselves standing on the edge of a cliff, unaware that the ground beneath them has already begun to crumble. In Europe, power takes a different shape, one built not on empire, but on secrecy, loyalty, and fear. The Knights Templar were warriors and monks, trusted by kings yet feared for their wealth and influence. For years they defended pilgrims, guarded trade routes, and built a reputation that stretched across continents. But fame is a dangerous companion, and their success attracted the jealousy of powerful men. King Philip IV of France, pressed by debt and ambition, turned suspicion into accusation. The man caught at the center of this storm was Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars. His trial was filled with coercion and twisted evidence, leaving him trapped between truth and survival. But in his last hours, as he stood before a crowd gathered along the riverbank, he chose to speak honestly. Calm, steady, and unbroken, he declared the innocence of his order and appealed to a justice higher than the crown. Those who witnessed his final moments never forgot them. Whispers spread across Europe of dignity in adversity, of truth spoken in the face of power, and of the sudden, unexpected deaths of the king and pope shortly afterward. Whether coincidence or legend, Jacques de Molay's calm defiance became part of Europe's collective memory. His story is a reminder of how fragile truth becomes when caught between the gears of politics. But not every medieval story rises from palaces or sacred halls. Some come from the shadows where ordinary people lived and survived. Peter Nears traveled through the German lands during a time when crime was seen as an attack on the very stability of society. Rumors grew around him, rumors fanned by fear, by superstition, and by the desperate need for communities to believe they understood the dangers around them. When he was captured, the authorities responded with a severity meant not just to punish him, but to reassure a world that felt vulnerable. His fate reflected the anxieties of towns and villages where the line between myth and truth was often thin. Nears became less a man and more a symbol of the dangers people imagined lurking beyond the edges of their homes. As centuries passed, a different kind of story unfolded, one shaped not by crime or politics, but by the unpredictable power of nature. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, one of the most commanding leaders of the Holy Roman Empire, led his forces toward the Holy Land during the Third Crusade. His men trusted him, believing his leadership would shift the balance of power. But as they traveled through Anatolia, the unexpected arrived quietly, without warning. A river crossing a simple, everyday challenge became the stage for tragedy. Barbarossa's sudden drowning shocked his troops, leaving them confused and leaderless. Plans forged over months collapsed in an instant. The crusading armies scattered, changed forever by a twist of fate that no strategy could prevent. His death became a reminder that even the strongest leaders are vulnerable to the smallest dangers. In a world where the natural landscape could turn deadly in moments, power was always temporary, always fragile. Yet the medieval era had one more tragedy to reveal, one that came not from war, faith, or nature, but from an accident so strange it seemed almost unbelievable. In the German city of Erfurt, nobles and church officials gathered for a political meeting in a large building supported by wooden beams. The room filled quickly, the weight of armor, robes, and bodies pressing down on the old structure. No one realized how close the floor was to giving way until it did. In one sudden moment, the beams snapped and the floor collapsed, sending those gathered into the vast latrine pit below. It was a disaster that stunned the region, not because of violence, but because of how suddenly and unexpectedly tragedy could strike. The Erfurt disaster became a sobering reminder of the fragility of medieval life, where architectural flaws and simple chance could have consequences as profound as any battlefield. And then, from the mountains and forests of Eastern Europe, came the story of a ruler whose legend casts a long shadow even today. Vlad III of Wallachia, known later by darker names, lived in a land carved by war. His principality lay on a fault line between powerful empires. Loyalty was uncertain, betrayal was common, and survival required a balance of strength and fear. His methods were harsh, shaped by the brutal realities of defending a small nation against overwhelming threats. But his death remained shrouded in uncertainty. Some chronicles say he died fighting the Ottomans, struck down in the chaos of battle. Others whisper of betrayal within his ranks, the kind that had haunted his reign from the beginning. What historians do know is that his head was taken to Constantinople, a final symbol of a ruler both feared and respected by his enemies. His death reflects the deadly complexity of the region he ruled, a place where politics, war, and shifting alliances created dangers as constant as the changing seasons. When we set these stories side by side, Lawrence's quiet defiance almost does seem as fall with his city, Jacques de Molay's final vow, the fearful legend of Peter Nears, the sudden loss of Frederick Barbarossa, the tragic collapse in Erfurt, and the mysterious death of Vlad the Impaler. A picture forms. It is not a picture of endless violence, but of a world shaped by forces larger than any one person. Each of these lives ended differently, yet each reflects the same truth. The medieval world was unpredictable, unforgiving, and shaped by moments that could transform individual fate into historical memory. Some met death with courage, some with surprise, some with dignity, some with shadows they never escaped. Their final moments reveal a world where power, faith, fear, and fate were always intertwined. And perhaps that is why their stories endure. They show us that history is not just a collection of dates and events, but a human drama filled with choices made under pressure, with beliefs tested, with empires rising and falling, and with destinies changed in a single heartbeat. The medieval world reminds us that greatness and tragedy often walk side by side, and that a single moment, sometimes born from courage, sometimes from miscalculation, sometimes from chance, can echo across centuries. These stories do not simply tell us how people died. They show us how they lived, what they believed, what they feared, and what they fought to protect. They remind us that even in a world of kings and conquerors, it is often in the quietest, most unexpected moments that history finds its voice.